right, everybody, welcome. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records. Today on Dat Fury Radio, Sound Advice, Episode 1. This is a experiment with a new format, and the experiment is not going to be quite what I think this format might be in the long run. Let me say, so I'm coming to you from the B room, aka the bedroom of Mr. Furious Records Studios. Also, I don't know what this is going to look like for video, but you might see my background as the mess hall of the USS Cerritos from Star Trek Lower Decks. But anyway, sound advice. So my idea for sound advice is to discuss works in progress and roadblocks or speed bumps that folks are having as they're working through songs or pieces. In this case, I'm following up on something Corey and I talked about last week in terms of the bass line for my song An End to Live For, which is part of the MS Ride Jam My Wave, Don't Jam My Wave project, which is a double album of guitar-based music that I've been working on for a couple of years and will come out in, again, a couple of years probably. The idea for the format is that you, listeners, friends, folks might bring material that they're stuck on, and we'll play it and discuss it live on the pod and see if we can generate some ideas as far as how to get around these speed bumps. It's almost kind of like Song Exploder, the Song Exploder podcast, wonderful podcast, but happening halfway through the development process instead of at the end of the process. And in my case here with An End to Live For, I'm 3/4 of the way maybe through the process. Everything basically is written but not recorded yet, and so we'll get into that. Again, calling back to last week's episode and the wonderful 12-tone analysis of Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. What I'm going to be illustrating here is the way that idea of fractal rhythmic divisions and having motives that repeat at different timescales from 1 beat, 2 beats, 4 beats, 8 beats, 16 beats, and so on. And the idea here is that I'm going to illustrate that and walk you through how that idea helped me write the bass line for this song. So let's get into the sound examples. The first example I'm going to play is just the original idea, which was on a Rhodes electric piano. This is the basic chord progression. Slow tempo. Two-bar progression. Two or three chords, depending on how you count them. That slash chord in the first bar. And there's that figure that comes at the end of 4 bars. There's that figure very clearly. Da, 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 that kind of leads you back around every 4 bars. So that was the original idea. That was what I started with. Let's add the drums and vocals more for your context than anything else.
In a dream of somewhere far from here, but true enough to touch, becoming and invisible. shadow on the sun, impossible and warm, tempered in the crush.
So there, that is basically one verse. That is 8 bars, 4 times through the chord progression. There's already some fractal stuff going on in terms of the drums are on a 1-bar loop with some variation. The chords are on a 2-bar loop. The Rhodes figure that kind of is the turnaround is on a 4-bar loop. And the vocals, the melody has an A, B, A, C pattern. So it's kind of a 4-bar loop embedded in a 8-bar loop because the C only comes around at the end of the full 8-bar verse. I should tell you, so the Rhodes, in terms of the recording process, the Rhodes here is real, the drums are real, meaning what you'll hear in the final mix. This is unmixed, this is a work in progress. The vocals are a scratch vocal, just one take. So pay no mind to the quality of the vocal. This is a work in progress. And so this is what I was listening to when I came to write the bass line. And my instinct was to play on the 1 and the 3. I'm going to play for you what that sounded like. And that was a pretty strong instinct. I was struggling with this for a few days to unlock it. So I was playing with this and it sounded right in technical terms, the kick playing with the bass, but not cool. It did not have the vibe. It sounded simplistic and amateurish in a negative sense to my ears. This is all subjective, obviously. But here's what that initial bass idea sounded like with a bass playing on the 1 and the 3 along with the chord change. There's the 3. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That 3 of the first bar is what sounded bad to me. It just sounded rigid. It sounded unsatisfying, I guess. It did not feel like the part that it needed to be. And again, I struggled with that for several days, several practice sessions, trying to unlock that. And I was trying to play more, and more didn't work. The key was to kind of realize that the gap in the fractal structure was more of a 4-beat gap than a 2-beat gap. There's already a lot of elements going on. We've got, well, we'll talk about all the elements of the structure when I play you the full thing, but Rhodes on every beat, 1 beat, steady right hand on the Rhodes, 2 beats on the tom and the snare. It feels like 2 beats in the kick. Now the kick isn't actually playing always on the 1 and the 3, but that is where the strong down pulse is, which is a 2-beat loop. So we've got lots happening on a 1-beat loop, lots happening on a 2-beat loop, and then the chord change is on the 2-bar loop. And so the gap or the opportunity in that structure is a 1-bar pattern. And technically, the kick is sort of on a 1-bar pattern. It's a little ambiguous, but that is the gap in the fractal up and down in terms of filling every gap, filling every space in a fractal structure. So the key was not to play more, it was to play less and delay that bass note from the 3 to the 4. And that made all the difference in the world. I'm going to play the bad one, the first one, I should say, again. And then I'm going to play the better one right after. So here is, again, the bad one. 3. And here is the better one. Oh, that feels so much better. 1, 2, bass on 4, 1. One, 2. And that last progression, I actually do drop the bass note on 3, reinforcing the 8-bar structure. I'm going to play that one more time. This is the real bass track that you will hear in the final mix of this song 2 years from now or whatever. And that feels so much better to me. Bass note on the 1 with the kick and Rhodes. Bass note on the 4 with the tom in this case, not the kick. Later in the song, it turns into a snare. Now, the higher level fractal structures, the 2-bar, the 4-bar, are linked with the lower level structures, the 2-beat, the 1-beat, via the bass on the 4-beat, which is 1-bar pattern, rhythmic pattern. And that was the key. It was actually playing less or delaying that beat to give more space and more balance to the different repetition lengths in that fractal structure. So let me play for you now a longer loop. Again, it's not even a rough mix, it's a work in progress. But this will have real Rhodes, electric piano, real drums, real bass, real guitar. There's guitar fills, and improvisation, and scratch vocals. This is just a reference vocal. But here is the intro and the first verse of An End to Live For.
Far
So hopefully you hear there how all those different elements come together. We've got from the bottom up, the shortest repetition up. We've got the ride cymbal on a half beat or an eighth note swing repetition. The right hand of the Rhodes piano, the main chords and harmonic structure, on a one beat or quarter note repetition. The tom or snare, as it becomes, is on a two beat, two quarter note repetition. The bass, the rhythm of the bass guitar, is on a four beat or one bar repetition. 2 bars, 8 beats. We've got the kick, we've got the chord change, and we've got one vocal phrase. 16 beats, 4 bars. We've got the different turnarounds from the chord change. We've got a vocal variation, A, B in the first 4 bars, A, C in the second 4 bars. We've got the bass going up and down octaves on that F. Is it F or F sharp? It's one of those. The second chord. I tune down to E flat a lot, so then keeping keys straight between piano instruments and guitar bass instruments is something I have to think about. Anyway, and then on the 8 bar, the full 32 beats, 8 bars, you've got the full A, B, A, C melody structure. You've got the different bass variations as far as how the bass turns around the chord change. With all that laid out from a half beat, how many doubles is that? Let me count. So half beat, 1 beat, 2 beats, 4 beats, 8 beats, 16 beats, 6 levels of fractal structure and different loop lengths. Again, here is that.
Shadow on the sun, impossible and warm, tempered in the crush.
I suppose you could add the guitar as a seventh layer. It's not part of a structure, really. It's improvised throughout the song, basically. But it is another, I guess you could call it a structure the length of the entire song. That's weird. And I want to stress the heady part of writing this only came into play with the bass line. I didn't set out thinking about all of this. The Rhodes, the drums, the melody was all just intuitive or based on prior experience. It didn't come from the head. It came from the heart and the fingers and the voice. And it was, but this is a good illustration that for me, it's the interplay of intuition and instinct and formality and technical knowledge. That interplay can be very fruitful. I was going along an intuitive path, adding parts that made sense by ear. But when I ran into a roadblock with the bass, it was a technical idea or a more a more formal, a more heady insight that got me past the roadblock. And that's not, it can work the opposite way just as well. Sometimes you're in your head and the way past the bump is to toss all that out and just turn everything up to 10 and play, or clear your mind and improvise. It can go both ways. My point is that it's the mixing of the two that I find fruitful. And then when you're going down one path, leaning in one direction, and get to a barrier, sometimes zagging when you've been on a zig is the answer. And really, I'm recording this less than a week after David Lynch has died. It's that, but to link it to that, it's the coffee and cherry pie, right? It's the dark and the light mixed together. It's the swirl that is beautiful. So I encourage you to try that. If you're stuck on something, whichever way you've been leaning, try leaning the other way and see where it gets you. If you have a work in progress you'd like to discuss on Sound Advice, please reach out. You can reach me via Bandcamp. That's mrfuriousrecords.bandcamp.com. In the right-hand column, there's a link to contact Mr. Furious Records, and you can reach me there. Not really on social media anymore, so that is probably the best way to reach me if you don't have my phone number or email address, which a lot of you do. Tell me what you think. Do you like Sound Advice? Is this something that's interesting to listen to? I'd love to know. And with that, I'll see you next week on Dat Fury Radio.